Labour's attitude towards the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the broader conflict in Gaza should be straightforward, but it seems much more complex and politically charged. And The Guardian today and other sources have outlined several critical aspects of this issue, reflecting the tensions within the party and the UK's cautious foreign policy position. Under Keir Starmer's leadership, Labour has shown significant support for Israel's right to defend itself, a stance which has sparked considerable internal and public debate, particularly given Netanyahu's uncontrolled pursuit of Gaza and Hamas in Gaza and the civilian casualties that have resulted. Starmer has been criticised for his reluctance to unequivocally condemn Israel's actions in Gaza, a position that contrasts sharply with that of many Labour voters. And according to Le Monde, 83% of Labour voters want Israel to end its military campaign in Gaza, highlighting a disconnect between the party leadership and its base. No problem there. The controversy extends to Labour's handling of the ICC arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Israeli Defence Minister Yoav Gallant, alongside the Hamas leaders. The warrants, issued on charges including the starvation of civilians and extermination of civilians, have been supported by various international entities but condemned by the UK's previous Conservative government. Rishi Sunak criticised the ICC, asserting that there is no moral equivalence between Israel and Hamas, reflecting a long-standing UK policy of supporting Israel despite its controversial activities. Yasmin Ahmed, the UK Director of Human Rights Watch, emphasises the importance of the UK withdrawing its legal challenge against the ICC's jurisdiction. Ahmed argues that adhering to international law and supporting the ICC efforts are crucial to maintain the UK's credibility in the broader international human rights advocacy. The new Labour government, therefore, faces pressure to align its policies with these principles, reflecting what David Lammy, the new Foreign Secretary, has called Labour's progressive realism in human rights. But of course, there's a problem between the rhetoric and the reality. Labour has faced internal conflicts on this. The suspension of MPs like Andy MacDonald and Kate Osamor for their pro-Palestinian statements underscores the party's contentious internal dynamics. Additionally, Starmer's attempts to avoid parliamentary motions to support Israel while downplaying Palestinian suffering have sparked further criticism and political fallout, including losses in by-elections and of course, the string of losses nationally during the general election. It's time. It's time for Labour to tighten its belt and get to grips with its understanding of Netanyahu, of the Gaza conflict, and of the internal division this creates and the public scrutiny this will involve. The party's challenge lies in balancing its historical support for Palestinian rights. Of course, if you go back further, its historic support for the foundation and the infancy of Israel itself. The problem for Labour is the shift in Israeli politics from left-wing to right-wing. And that can, of course, shift back. What is important is to make a distinction between a criticism of Israel and a criticism of Israel's government. And even criticizing Israel's government, there's even a distinction there to be made between the government and the belligerents of a very small group in that government who are defying the military protocols that are already in place in order to pursue their own course of action, which is the eradication of Hamas through a military victory. I don't think even if this were successful that it would eradicate terrorism in Israel and from the Palestinians, and particularly from people in Gaza. This is breeding terrorism rather than destroying it, and it's fomenting hatred and discord rather than inviting diversity and interaction, neighborliness. I think there's every reason to defend. I think Israel has every right to defend itself. I think Israel has every right to demand the return of its hostages. I'm not convinced that Israel has the right to lay siege to Gaza in the way that it has done. And I'm more concerned, I think, practically by the overriding of these military protocols as well, because that becomes a tangible issue that can be debated. Ethically, I find that issue worrying, because it's basically a matter of how many people can we accept being killed in order to achieve our objective. What are the numbers? And ethically, I think no civilians can be killed in achieving the objective. Clearly, my ethical position there is not practical, but it doesn't mean it's not an ethical position. It's not a reasonable ethical position, and I think Netanyahu has not contributed to the defense of Israel, and will be under pressure to explain himself and the reasons that defense failed in October. But the Labour Party, for its part, needs to push for accountability, for justice in the region, for security, and for peace. Those are the priorities. And holding Netanyahu to account is part of that. And the upcoming decisions, particularly regarding the ICC's jurisdiction, are pivotal in defining Labour's human rights stance and Labour's internationalism and its approach to the Israel-Palestinian conflict.